chab su chi. Dagi jinzo jepe sanam. Rula penche sanje drupa. Sanje cheda soichi chonam. Chanjo bado dani chabs. Dagi jinzo jepe sanam je. Rula penche sanje drupa. Benden save lama ramboji. Dagi jiwo peme den shula. Gaden chembo kone jezonde. Kusun tuji nedru sauduso. Sashe busu sashe meta chan rabling shi nide jem. Sanje shingdo midda puwa yin rukam namla shinla jupa. Sanje namche sambada loye jita jit. Chichon tumun tekpa ye chuchi kolo kodu. So, good morning to everybody. And now we begin the final session this time, studying Jamgon Kongtrul Lodro Thaye's guide to the Shentong Madhyamaka view. And yesterday we began the important section on what is to be practiced, having heard before that what is to be understood in relation to the view. So for the practice teachings, first we had the general preliminaries, and then we had the practice itself, beginning with the session practice itself, beginning with refuge and bodhicitta, so we covered that. And then the main content, the main part of the meditation session was divided by Kongtrul Lodro Thaye into two subsections. The first one being how to meditate according to the teachings presented in the second turning of the wheel. In short, in a way, the Shentong Madhyamaka view, which for us, who aspire to follow Shentong, the Shentong Madhyamaka is like the necessary preliminary, one might almost say the necessary cleansing agent, which is to dissolve our attachment to the conditioned phenomena. The conditioned phenomena, the five skandhas, the five aggregates, all phenomena that come from cause and conditions, but to which we're attached as if they have substantial existence, as if they are intrinsically real. And it is through such attachment to those phenomena being intrinsically real that we cannot recognize and settle in what is actually real, which is the Buddha nature, the true nature of our mind. So yesterday we went through that meditation according to the second turning of the wheel. And now we come to the meditation according to the third turning of the wheel. This is what Kongtrul Lodro Thaye says as a kind of heading or kind of summary at the beginning. When some degree of the concentration, the samadhi, tinizin, the Tibetan word, as His Holiness mentioned to us yesterday, when some degree of the meditative concentration of calm abiding and insight has developed through practicing, as we were instructed yesterday, seeing all phenomena to be nothing more than mind, then looking into mind to see, in fact, even mind as a subject perceiver doesn't exist. So when, through that meditation, signs of us gaining a degree of realization has occurred, through true signs of calm abiding, even settling of mind, and vipassana, direct seeing. When those qualities arise through such meditation, then he says the introduction that makes the correct distinction, such as between the existent and the non-existent, in accord with the final wheel, the third wheel, and the Vajrayana should be made. So let me unpack that. The significance of what Controller Thaye is saying is, well, to reiterate what we've mentioned before, you cannot be introduced to the Buddha nature until you already have cleared away belief in these imaginary entities, conditioned phenomena, your five skandhas, etc. Only then is it in a way effective to introduce the Buddha nature, because otherwise you'll simply confuse what you're being told about the nature of mind, about the nature of reality, with such ideas as a true self. Such ideas as a true self, something like that. So now this introduction can be made, which will, as he says, make the distinction between the existent and the non-existent. What does he mean? Haven't we already just heard from the common Madhyamaka that the extremes of existence and non-existence are invalid? They're not actually established. We cannot find them. No, the meaning is expressing the Shentong view that while it is correct and complete wisdom to say that conventional truth phenomena, those phenomena that arise from causing conditions, are empty, are in that sense not existent, one cannot say that of the Buddha nature. If we negate the Buddha nature, say that also is truly non-existent, Buddhahood is not possible, enlightenment is not possible. So we can finally say the Buddha nature is real, is the only real, and is truly existent. Not existent in the way conventional phenomena are, being produced and causing conditions, enduring for a moment and then passing away, but truly existent in the sense that actually it's the only reality. Everything else is merely fictional. And this is the middle way, because the middle way doesn't assert that conditioned phenomena are truly existent, but it doesn't deny that ultimate reality is truly existent. So it goes beyond both extremes. Therefore, this view is truly the view that is unelaborated, not falling into assertion of phenomena that are unreal as real, like conditioned phenomena, but not negating the Buddha nature as if that is merely non-existence. Anyway, this will be made clear to us as we go through. And he says also, make those correct by being introduced to the view, to Buddha nature now, then you not only be able to make those distinctions, but this introduction will be in accord with the teachings presented by Lord Buddha in the third and final wheel. In short, with the sutras that proclaim the Buddha nature, the 20 Nyingpo Dun sutras, as they're called, the essential essence sutras, such as, like I mentioned earlier, the famous sutra of Queen Srimala Devi. And he also says, and this is very important for us to note, to pick up on, this introduction to Buddha nature is made in accord with those sutras and with the Vajrayana. So, in other words, Controller Thaye is asserting that the Shentong view is finally that which is also expressed in the tantras, in particularly in the Anuttara Tantra. So that's his introduction. Now we will work through this this section. Although I cannot promise we'll complete it. In fact, I can promise we won't complete it. Especially as I've been asked to speak slowly. Okay. So, Controller Thaye says, at this point, where we've got to yesterday, if one has a general or rough understanding, approximate understanding, if you like, of the scriptural and commentarial traditions, that is sufficient. What is he referring to? He's referring to the sources of the Buddha nature teaching. The sutras, that's what he means by the scriptural, so like the 20 essence sutras we just mentioned, and commentarial, the great shastras transmitted in India, in particular the 5 Maitreya Dharmas, transmitted by Maitreya to Asanga. So if we knew those, actually the introduction, we could get the introduction from those. If the Lama would teach us those, then there is the introduction to the Buddha nature, and we'll be able to meditate on it. Or, if not, the reading transmission of the text known as Richa Neden Jamso, into English, the mountain Dharma and ocean of certainty. This could be given to you as an introduction by the master. So this text is the text composed by Dolpopa Sherab Jelsen, the great contemporary of Ranjan Dorji, mentioned earlier by Jamgon Control, whose teachings were preserved in the Jonangpa school. And this is a very important presentation of the Shentong teaching. So you could get the introduction from receiving that teachings, from that text. But actually, of course, in our present text of Jamgon Controls, he's utilizing all those sources, the scriptural sources, the Jude Lama, Dolpopa's teaching, Ranjan Dorji's teaching, and so on, to make his presentation. Anyway, Control says, through these, you will understand that the essence of mind is natural emptiness endowed with all supreme characteristics, and it is referred to by many names, such as luminosity, Buddha nature, Tathata, Mahamudri, and notice the feminine ending there, by the way, not Mahamudra, Mahamudri, or Aham, and so on, which are unaffected by the fault of contradiction. He means that these are different terms, but they are actually all pointing to the same reality. So he's told us the essence of mind is natural emptiness endowed with all supreme characteristics. What that means is that mind is empty, but not in the way that those who follow the non-affirming negation interpretation of Madhyamaka understand. Mind is empty of all incidental temporary phenomena, therefore it cannot be confused with the 5 aggregates, cannot even be confused with the 5th aggregate, the temporary conditioned consciousness, is empty of all those conditioned phenomena, the true nature of mind. It's not created, not produced, not findable, not as an entity, conditioned entity at all. It neither arises, nor endures, nor passes away. So it's empty of all those things. But it is not empty of its own qualities. So it is not empty of the Buddha qualities, the 10 powers and so on, which will be described to us later. So therefore, it's not empty of its own nature. And that is the meaning, of course, of the term Shentong, empty of other, or extrinsic emptiness, as opposed to rangtong, empty of self. So when we say mind is empty, we agree, that is true, mind is empty, but is empty of all, so to speak, foreign elements, external elements, incidental, temporary elements or phenomena. Therefore we call this type of emptiness, emptiness endowed with supreme characteristics, not a mere negation emptiness, like saying that's simply not there, like the horns on a rabbit or the child of a barren woman, but emptiness because it's beyond all conditioned phenomena, but not in itself a non-existence. And this true nature of mind is referred to in the different sources by many names, such as Wusel, or luminosity, sometimes translated into English as the clear light, the basic condition of mind itself, the clear light, which particularly term used in the Tantras. Buddha nature is the term used in the third turning of the wheel sutras for this. Tathagata Garbha in Sanskrit. Deshik Nyingpo in Tibetan. Tatata is a Sanskrit word which means like thusness or as it isness. Debjini in Tibetan. How the mind really is. Or Mahamudri, the great seal. As I pointed out, here the Sanskrit in Tibetan is Chajichem-mo. Usually we hear Chajichem-po, the male form, but in the Tibetan text, Chajichem-mo. So in Sanskrit, Mahamudri, the great seal, which in this way also, by using the feminine ending for it, Control is subtly pointing out this is itself none other than the perfection of wisdom, the Prajna Paramita, known as the mother of all Buddhas. And then the term finally, Aham. This is a term from the Anuttara Tantra, the Supreme Yoga Tantra, the highest of the four levels of the Tantra sets, and particularly comes from the completion stage practices in the Anuttara Tantra, where A represents the red element of the female and Ham represents the white male element, which duality is brought to an end in the completion stage practices of the second and third initiations. And aham in Sanskrit actually is the word which means I. So it's like poetically signifying that is your real nature, hence your Buddha nature, brought about in the Anuttara Tantra by the melting of the white and red elements. Anyway, all these are different terms, and Control Thai is just helping us to see that they all really point to the same reality, the true nature of mind, empty of all extrinsic phenomena. As is said, he says, Control Thai continues, as is said, emptiness and selflessness are taught in all the teachings of the Buddha. So even in all three turnings of the wheel, in both Hinayana and Mahayana, in both common Mahayana from the sutras and uncommon Mahayana from the Tantras, emptiness and selflessness are taught in all. But fools who do not comprehend the meaning of emptiness and selflessness will become lost. So that although emptiness and selflessness are indeed taught in all the teachings of the Buddha, they're not taught to the same extent. And therefore it is necessary for us to have the full, total presentation of emptiness, or else we'll get stuck, we'll deviate and get locked into an inferior understanding of emptiness, which is why we need the full presentation up to and including this presentation, in accord with the third turning of the wheel and in accord with the Vajrayana. So he says, Control Thai says, by relying upon two truths and four reliances, thus achieving a state free of faults, you will understand the definitive and ultimate teachings of the Buddha and actually experience primordial wisdom in your own meditation. So that's for a relatively short sentence, that's maybe 3 weeks' work to unpack. So by relying upon the true truths, of course, you know, as we've said many times, and you hear so often, the Buddhist teachings fall into the two truths: conventional truth, how appearances appear to be, how phenomena appear to be, and ultimate truth, how they actually are when investigated by the eye of wisdom. So what he's saying here is, first of all, you need to have an understanding that the teachings fall into these two categories, lest you confuse what is merely a conventional truth teaching in a way from the point of view of helping us to practice virtue because it will lead to merit and so on, and therefore could use conventional truth terminology like me, you, this, that, and the other, all of which, when we investigated from the perspective of ultimate truth, we would find is not ultimately valid, because we cannot find such entities under examination. But nevertheless, the world appears to function in such a way from the level or perspective of conventional truth. So to really understand emptiness properly, to a full extent, you need first of all to have in your mind clear distinction between teachings that are conventional truth and teachings that are ultimate truth. Furthermore, you need to have, as he said, a clear understanding of the four reliances. What are they? Well, Mipam Rinpoche talks about them in the Kenjuk, his great work, but the four reliances are well known, really, as slogans that you should hear a lot, which is, first of all, rely upon the teaching, not upon the person. That is, that it is easy to think that a charismatic person is utterly reliable, but you should be relying upon the teachings that he or she is pointing to, which of course are teachings of the Buddha. So rely upon the teachings, not the person, because without knowledge of the Buddhist teachings, you may actually even mistake a person for a reliable guide when they're not. So always look beyond the teacher to the teachings. That is the first point, first reliance. Secondly, rely upon the meaning, not the words. Of course, the words are a way of taking hold of the meaning. How do we access the meaning of the Dharma? Except by going through the words. But finally, if we just rely upon the words alone, we'll become, as it were, fixated on the beauty or the clarity of the words and forget the meaning that they're pointing to, which is, of course, the crucial thing in order for us to follow the path, that we understand the meaning. And then, so even a very incredibly profound teaching could possibly sometimes be presented in a not very elegant way, in very simple or perhaps even rough ways, where some teaching that turns out to be finally bogus or false could be presented with great poetry. After all, I suppose most of you are adult enough to know that poets are notorious liars. If you're not, you should know that. Don't follow their advice, no matter what it is they're trying to invite you to do with them. Okay? And then thirdly, so leaving aside matters of literature and romance, back to the Dharma. Thirdly, said, rely upon the definitive teachings, not the provisional teachings. This is very important in terms of the Shentong, or Madhyamaka as a whole. That is to say, as we've covered already, I suppose, the Buddha, sometimes his words actually are simply provisional, a provisional validity made for a certain person or a certain audience at a certain time to get them from a particular point, to get over to them a particular point, to encourage them in a certain way. But later on they need to receive a teaching which is actually, as it were, definitive. It talks about reality as it truly is. So provisional teaching would be, to make a simple example, would be like when Buddha, as he was about to pass away, and the attendants were asking, what will we do when you've gone? And Buddha said, rely upon yourselves. I've taught you the Dharma, rely upon yourselves. The term selves there is a provisional term. Buddha wasn't therefore saying, oh, by the way, I've been lying to you for 45 years. There is a real self. He meant just you've got everything you need, carry on, practice it. You don't need my presence after this. So it's a provisional teaching. And there are many such provisional teachings given by Lord Buddha, which then need to be qualified and almost like to say corrected, not that they were a lie, but corrected by definitive teachings. So we must be able to distinguish in all the statements Buddha made between what is a definitive statement, what is a provisional statement. And that, of course, becomes very important in understanding Shentong, because for Shentompas, the Buddha nature teaching is very definitely definitive, not provisional, as some Madhyamakas would say. A point we actually did mention. And then fourthly, the fourth reliance is rely upon Yeshi, not Namshi. What does this mean? Namshi means ordinary consciousness, the consciousness of the fifth skandha, the consciousness that knows things by division. It's this and not that. But that mind, therefore, is operating within a dualistic framework. Of course, it's affected by ignorance. So Namshi can get you so far. It can help you to, get from A to B, so to speak, help you to understand a little bit how things work, and even figure out and understand some Dharma teachings. But when it comes to the ultimate reality, it's not possible. Like Shantideva says in Bodhisattva chapter 9, the ultimate is beyond mind. He means Namshi, beyond dualistic mind. To realize the ultimate nature of reality, you need Yeshi, sometimes translated as primordial wisdom, or sometimes translated as transcendental wisdom, but in any case meaning not conceptual consciousness, not divided consciousness, not dualistic consciousness, that which goes beyond them entirely. Only that can, as it were, access for you the ultimate nature of reality. And therefore the Buddha nature too is in a way only an object of Yeshi, not of Namshi. Of course that Yeshi, in that Yeshi there's no subject and object. It is the mind recognizing mind recognizing its own true nature. So as Control in a way is saying to us, you need to know about these four alliances if you're to be able to really get what is the significance of this, to understand the significance of the teaching on Buddha nature. So through them you'll understand the definitive and ultimate teachings of the Buddha. That's what we want to understand now. The definitive teachings, the Buddha nature teachings. The ultimate teachings, the Buddha nature teachings. And actually come to experience primordial wisdom in your own meditation. It was not end up with a dunchi, a mental object image of mind or of emptiness or the Buddha nature, but as it were, taste it directly, because your mind is fused with it. Because your mind is the Buddha nature and always has been. So he says, accordingly, like if you really are introduced to this view properly, you will realize that all composite here is another, we could have said conditioned, means produce them coming together, cause and conditions. All composite phenomena are mind's temporary imaginary nature. They're empty like a group of clouds. So imaginary nature is a term we've mentioned before here, derived from the Yogacara system. And imaginary means that which is entirely without reality, is merely just a fiction, just a matter of labels that are projected and which we then come to believe refer to real entities. The five aggregates, they are part of the mind's imaginary nature. In other words, the mind believes in them as real and takes them as, in a way, its own nature. But they've never been part of mind's own nature because they're not real. They're just a fantasy, just a fiction, just a fairy tale. So every time the mind identifies with any of these composite phenomena, the body, the feelings, the perceptions, the formations, the consciousness, in short, the five skandhas, it's identifying with that which is unreal, totally fictional, totally imaginary. They're empty. They're empty. They're empty of any intrinsic nature. They cannot be found when we analyze them through the Rangtong types of examination. That's what we found was absolutely without any reality. Just dependently arising appearances, like the appearance of the moon in the water, something that could never be grasped, never be taken hold of, which you can't rely on, you can't build upon, because it's just a temporary, imaginary phenomenon. Or clouds, as it says here, they're empty like clouds. Hello, London. Oh, so nice to be back here. Okay. I'll ask for my guitar later. Okay. So, yes, all these temporary phenomena are just like clouds, the analogy we heard earlier, covering the sky of the Buddha nature. So mind is empty of them. The true nature is introduced as unceasing luminous awareness, Buddha nature, the self-arising primordial wisdom. So by contrast with all those temporary conditioned phenomena, which are no more than fictions, now the true nature, that which is ultimately real, that which is the ultimate truth, is introduced. Your own awareness, unceasing, in the sense that because it was not produced from any causes and conditions, it can never end. It cannot die. It cannot cease. It is luminous, that is to say that because it's beyond subject and object, all appearances arise from it without any obstruction. It is the Buddha nature. We can call it also the self-arising primordial wisdom. Self-arising, once again, in the sense, not creating itself as in the first of the four analyses of conditioned phenomena, but just naturally present. No beginning to it. There's no point where it ever came into existence, not even created by itself. So it's the Rangjung Yeshi, to use the Tibetan term, the self-arising primordial wisdom. You should make this your experience. So now to do so that is like the prologue to the practice, to do so, to make this our experience, he says, begin the session of practice by taking refuge, again, by taking refuge and generating bodhicitta as explained earlier. So the very same refuge and bodhicitta prayers we used in the previous session, we can use again. And then he adds to this, some people are just not made for technology. I come from a very backward and primitive part of England called Lancashire, and we don't know about the advanced world there. So. Okay, we're ready for transmission. So, Controller Thaye adds a little bit to the preliminaries, refuge and bodhicitta. He says, according to Jetsun Taranata's text, so we mentioned him, Jetsun Taranata, this great late 16th century master of the Jonang tradition and very strong proponent of Shentong, he's in the Shentong lineage. According to Jetsun Taranata, one should also practice a session of mindfulness of one's lamas as Buddha. So, in other words, a kind of Guru Yoga practice could be introduced to our preliminary part of the session. He doesn't give any further details, but one could, for instance, pattern it on the simple form of Guru Yoga in the Lojong, or indeed on any type of Guru Yoga, if one's familiar with other Guru Yogas. Imagine in the Lama, one's personal Lama, as the union of all the lineage Lamas of the Shentong view, and then using either a spontaneous prayer or one of the general prayers to the Lama, requesting his or her and the lineage Lama's blessings, and then imagine that the Lama then dissolves into you because he's been seated or she's been seated on the crown of your head. So you could elaborate a simple Guru Yoga like that. But he gives no further instruction. Then, so Contra then says, at the end of that, the preliminary prayers, so now what's going to follow? Well, what's going to follow is, in a way, 8 different introductions to the nature of our mind being the Buddha nature. But these introductions are relying upon different sources, but primarily the Jude Lama, the supreme continuity. So the first introduction is going to be made by using the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and going through them to the Buddha nature itself. So like, meditate on the 3 jewels, meditate on the actual significance of the 3 jewels, and you'll find that they are actually just the expression or the manifestation of the Buddha nature itself. So this is what Contra Thaye says for this introduction by means of the 3 jewels. The Tathagata, the one gone to reality, or literally the thus gone, is an epithet of the Buddha. The Tathagata, so first jewel of course, cannot be shown. So he cannot be seen with the eye. So although we have representations of the jewel of the Buddha in the form of Buddha rupas, Buddha statues, and although we may think of the historical Buddha as this enlightened human being, the Namanikaya form, and other Buddhas as having form and so on, actually the real nature of the Buddha cannot be seen to have a form, cannot be seen by the eye, therefore. And as for the Dharma, the jewel of Dharma, Control Thaye says, the Dharma cannot be uttered, so it cannot be conveyed to the ear. But that, of course, is very paradoxical, because the Dharma is, we generally understand, to be exactly that which can be spoken, that which can be, therefore, conveyed to our ear. But actually, the Dharma is about the inexpressible nature of reality. So no matter though we use words like Dharma, like emptiness, like Buddha nature, even like inexpressible, the Dharma is not contained in them. The Dharma cannot be compressed in those words. So really the Dharma is unspeakable, as the ultimate nature of reality is unspeakable, because it's beyond concepts and language. And the Sangha we take to be the followers, in particular the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva followers of the Dharma, spoken by the Buddha. But if the Buddha really is beyond form and cannot be seen, and the Dharma is beyond speech and therefore cannot be spoken, the followers themselves also, as Control says, the Sangha is uncompounded, so it cannot be venerated by body, speech, and mind. Those who meditate on the Dharma, which points to the inexpressible nature of reality, they themselves must also be beyond form and beyond expression. What they realize when they realize the true nature of their minds, the Buddha nature, the luminosity, means that they too, in their real status as the Sangha, they wouldn't be a noble Sangha that we could rely upon if they hadn't actually realized the inexpressible. So all three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, their only reality, the only reason they are three jewels, who we can rely upon, is in a way because they're beyond being three jewels. We say that the three jewels are the supports for the practice of worship, veneration, and therefore gaining merit. And we venerate them by prostrations, by reciting prayers of praise, by visualizing and thinking of them. But they're beyond all of that, the real three jewels, because, so to speak, their true reality is the inexpressible nature of reality. So he continues to explain this further. Since the Buddha nature is uncompounded, it is called permanent. We've touched on this. That which doesn't arise through the combination of cause and conditions, precisely because it doesn't have any beginning, cannot end. Only that which begins can end. But the Buddha nature never began. So therefore it can be called permanent. Buddha nature is called sky. Control Thaye continues. Buddha nature is like sky. Sky, an analogy for that which has no beginning and no end. Buddha nature is the Tathagata. In other words, Buddha nature is expressed for us as a Buddha in the figure of the Buddha. The Tathagata himself is therefore uncompounded. And that's his real nature. The uncompounded is permanent. As we saw, that which is not created cannot end. This permanence is the Dharma, meaning the Buddha nature, because it was never created, will never end. Therefore, it's always present, always, we could say, available for us to realize as our own nature. In short, any of us at any time, any being, any deluded samsaric being, can awaken to the Buddha nature. And that is, in a way, what we mean by the Dharma. The Dharma is therefore beyond words and language, but it is, so to speak, the revelation of that which is naturally present, the Buddha nature, the nature of our mind. The Dharma, he continues, the Dharma is the Sangha. The Dharma expresses itself through the Sangha, through the followers. The Sangha is also, therefore, uncompounded. So, this is the first of Control's 8 points of introduction to show us the actual reality of the three jewels is that they're nothing other than the expression of the Buddha nature. If that weren't the case, they'd be actually no true refuge, because one would be taking refuge in simply more compounded, composite, conditioned, and therefore deceptive phenomena, such as samsaric beings, samsaric creations, and so on and so forth. But we can be sure they're utterly reliable because they are finally nothing more than an expression of the true nature of reality, which never began and will never end, and which we can call the Buddha nature. This is why in the chapter on refuge, in Tapotajan, the jewel ornament, which is based upon the Jude Lama in this particular point, the Gampopa clarifies that the Sangha and the Dharma are in a way only temporary refuges. The Buddha is the only ultimate refuge, and that is because the Sangha are just the followers who practice the Dharma, and the Dharma itself is just a raft to get us to the level of Buddhahood, to cross the stream of samsara. And the Buddha is the ultimate refuge, Gampopa says, quoting the Jude Lama, because the Buddha possesses the Dhammakaya. He has recognized the true nature of reality, and therefore he's the Dhammakaya, the ultimate mode, the ultimate body of Buddhahood, of enlightenment. Without that, if the Buddha had not attained the Dhammakaya, he would just be a curious and possibly interesting Indian guy from 2,500 years ago. What he spoke, the Dharma, would be maybe interesting, maybe boring, and those who followed it would be, depending on what you think of gentlemen wearing yellow robes, merely curious old geezers, nothing more. But because the Buddha had realized the Dhammakaya, which is the Buddha nature, of course, then it is all meaningful. Everything in the three jewels is an effective refuge, precisely because it is no other than a manifestation of the Buddha nature. So as Control Thai says, in this way one should always recollect or be mindful of, the word is the same in Tibetan and Sanskrit, recollection and mindfulness, one should always recollect the ultimate three jewels. So he's suggesting to us, Control Thai is suggesting to us, whenever we take refuge, that's how we should meditate on it, how we should understand what we are doing in taking refuge. And in this way, the very act of taking refuge, of reciting the refuge prayers, will be an introduction to the Buddha nature. It's like, from the outside, we see a building, we see a shape, we see doors, and so on. We go through those, and then inside we see the central point of the building. But we have to go through the outer doors to come to that. Similarly, the three jewels are like that. From outside it looks like three jewels. The Sangha, the Dharma, and the Buddha. But when we really enter into them, profoundly take refuge, we find their core, the center of that structure, is none other than the Buddha nature, the true nature of our mind, the true nature of reality. So that is the first introduction. Now the second introduction, one could say, is an introduction through relying upon the tenet systems, the philosophical schools, their presentation of reality. So here it's not going to be all the four major tenet systems, so we don't, Contra doesn't refer to the Vaibhashikas and Sautrantikas, the so-called philosophical systems of the Hinayana, but Chittamatra and Madhyamaka. So again, he's going to use the device of the tenet systems as he used the device of the three jewels, this time once again to lead to the correct view. So he quotes the Lankavatara, the Lankavatara Sutra, which we used yesterday. Controlodhara says, relying on Chittamatra, outer objects are impermanent, which we could also gloss here as empty, because the key teaching of Chittamatra, well, it's there in its term, its name, mind only. There are no existent objects outside of mind. So our dualistic clinging to external objects, even the subtle external objects proposed by the Hinayana tenet systems, let alone by non-Buddhist systems, is overcome by Chittamatra. Then, he continues, relying on, the quote from the Chittamatra, from Lankavatara continues, I should say, relying on non-appearance, Chittamatra is transcended. Meaning, when we take the analysis of the Madhyamaka, as taught, as the source of which is the second turn of the wheel sutras, like Prajna Paramita, then we investigate the mind and its appearances, which the Chittamatra has defined as the highest view, the most profound view, to see that none of these appearances, nor mind itself as their basis, has any true nature, has any true existence, as we discussed previously. So the key of the cure for the Chittamatra view is the Madhyamaka view, which investigates and finds non-appearance. Non-appearance meaning there's no real entities, neither the appearances of mind nor the mind itself as their basis. So the common Madhyamaka, the Rangtong, to use that term again, is its key point, so to speak, according to this quotation, is non-appearance. No appearances of any reality. Then the quote continues from the Chittamatra, relying on the perfect conception, the perfect conception. Conception here means understanding, actually, just so there's no biological misapprehension here. Relying on the perfect conception, non-appearance is transcended. The yogin who remains in non-appearance does not see the Mahayana. So here's like, this is it. What cures, how do we avoid being fixated on the idea of simply non-affirming negation, the idea that there's simply nothing real whatsoever? If we take the common Madhyamaka view as ultimate, there is that great danger of falling into a kind of nihilism, and of course, therefore, missing the true nature of reality. So, to avoid that, to transcend clinging to non-appearance as being real, as being, the ultimate view, non-appearance, in fact, being just merely a dependent opposite of true appearance. To avoid that, rely on the perfect conception. That will be explained in a minute, but it is, it's not a spoiler, it's the Buddha nature, I can tell you that beforehand. The yogin who remains in non-appearance does not see the Mahayana. So Lord Buddha says this in Lankavatara, meaning that those who remain, as it were, clinging to non-affirming negation, megak, the idea that emptiness means there is nothing at all, they, as it were, they overshoot. Instead of arriving in the middle way position, transcending all extremes, they take non-existence too seriously, too literally, one might say, and do not see that non-existence only applies to conditioned phenomena, but not Buddha nature, the true nature of reality itself. So for that you need to, as it were, to correct your potential deviation, your potential over-exaggeration of emptiness into just nothingness. For that you need the Buddha nature teaching. Otherwise you'll deviate and miss the real Mahayana teaching. So Control now will unpick this quotation for us a little bit and show how it leads to Buddha nature. So he says, after one has understood delusory conventional truths as Chittamatra, so the Chittamatra teaching, its great contribution to our understanding is that it allows us to see there is no truly existent external phenomena. The idea that the truly existent external phenomena is just imaginary. These are just mere projections, projected labels upon the play, the dance, if you like, of mind. So the Chittamatra is like the best conventional truth you can have, one might say. The Chittamatra, with its teachings on how all appearances arise through the imprints carried in the stream of mind, the Kunjinamshe, the base consciousness, is really extremely helpful in explaining so much about the way samsara arises, the way karma transmits, and so on and so forth. So Chittamatra is our understanding in Kagyu and Sakya and Nyingma, to generalize a little bit, is that the Chittamatra teaching is excellent explanation for understanding conventional truth. So having used Chittamatra to get beyond the kind of crude, the gross, dualistic ideas, that there's really external objects and so on, then one should analyze non-appearance with the Madhyamaka. Then at that point, you bring in the Madhyamaka so that you do not cling to those appearances of mind as having any true existence. And neither the appearances nor the mind as their basis has any true existence. That's the Madhyamaka. So the Chittamatra job, so to speak, philosophically, their function, the Chittamatra teachings function or job, is to dissolve clinging to external objects. Then cut through clinging to mental appearances through Madhyamaka, through the common Madhyamaka. Then Control says, then having transcended even the Madhyamaka, meaning common Madhyamaka, enter into the unmistaken reality with the Madhyamaka having appearance. This doesn't quite work so well in the English translation because the Tibetan, having appearance, Nangche in Tibetan, the Madhyamaka possessing appearance versus the Madhyamaka not possessing appearance. The Rangtong is, Rangtong simply says appearances are unreal. All phenomena are unreal because they lack intrinsic nature. So it could tend towards nihilism. But the full Madhyamaka presentation, as in the third turn of wheel sutras, it does not deny, it does not reduce mind, the true nature of mind, to a nothingness. And that true nature of mind is in fact the real basis of all appearances. So we course correct again from negation by this definitive and final presentation of Madhyamaka. I mean, one might say, all appearances are nothing more than the Buddha nature. They're nothing in themselves. After all, they have no intrinsic nature. They seem to arise through cause and conditions, but actually those cause and conditions are themselves fictional, without any intrinsic nature. So really everything is simply that, the Buddha nature. That's why in the Tantras we present Dakparabjam, universal pure view. All fields are Buddha fields, Buddha palaces. All beings are the male and female deities, and so on. And this way of seeing the world, this meditative way of seeing the world, presented in the Tantras, is itself like the tantric way of practice based upon this proper Madhyamaka view. The Madhyamaka is not just the negation, but also is the Buddha nature teaching. And everything is, as I said, really just the manifestation of Buddha nature. So now, at this point, a third introduction, but in another way, continuing from this, Control says at this time, one might ask, what is the perfect conception that was referred to in this passage from the Lankavatara Sutra, where he says, relying upon the perfect conception. So here will come a subsection, which is, it is actually straight out of the Jude Lama, straight out of the Supreme Continuity treatise of Maitreya, but which you will also be familiar with to a certain extent if you've studied the Tappatajan, the jewel ornament. Because what will follow is what is sometimes known as teachings that prove the Buddha nature, that prove the Buddha nature. And this has three elements to it, we might say. So he starts. Not a single one. If the question was, how do I know there's Buddha nature? In a way, this is the answer if one poses that question. It also answers the question, and what is the Buddha nature? Not a single one of the four elements is not pervaded by space. So there's kind of sequence in this argument here. One thing is going to follow from another. Not a single one of the four elements is not pervaded by space. Meaning, even from the ordinary common Madhyamaka teachings, we can see that the elements that appear to make up the world, classically, earth, water, fire, and air, although this would work if you had a different element system too, it wouldn't really matter. So things that we think are physically real and there, truly existent, actually, when we analyze them, we'll see that their solidity is illusory, that actually they're all empty of any intrinsic nature. They're pervaded by space. One, for instance, can never arrive at a final, ultimate, irreducible particle. One might imagine the world is made of, the appearances I see are made of tiny, imperceptible to the eye atoms, but even those atoms cannot be found when investigated with reasoning, as is explained in the Madhyamaka, the common Madhyamaka reasoning. So, therefore, that's the case. No atom is not pervaded, no element is not pervaded by space. So too, There are no objects of cognition that are not pervaded by the Buddha's Dharmakaya. He means, so everything is empty and pervaded by space, is a synonym for being empty. So similarly, all thoughts, all emotions, all movements of namshi, of consciousness, and the other mental skandhas, they're actually empty too. The common Madhyamaka analysis shows us that. There's nothing that is not pervaded by emptiness. Nothing goes beyond emptiness. Emptiness pervades all phenomena. So therefore, what is the nature of the Dharmakaya? The Dharmakaya is said to be the highest mode, the ultimate mode of reality of Buddhas. The Dharmakaya itself is nothing more than emptiness. That's it. It is, a Buddha is said to have achieved the Dharmakaya when he or she, with non-dual wisdom, sees the emptiness of all phenomena, of all reality. So the Dharmakaya is just simply, in a way, another term for emptiness. And what is it that we're all, and the world is all pervaded by? By emptiness. So to say that I and all beings and all phenomena are pervaded by emptiness is to say we're all pervaded by the Dharmakaya. In technical terms, we call this pervasion, that one saying one thing entails another. To say we're all pervaded by emptiness entails, it necessarily follows, we're all pervaded by the Dharmakaya. Because Dharmakaya and emptiness are one and the same reality. So whether we know it or not, we have always been pervaded by the Buddha nature. So this is the first point. If the Buddha nature, if Dharmakaya was something conditioned, it would not be emptiness, but it is emptiness. And if the Buddha nature was a soul or God, it would not be pervaded by emptiness. But we are pervaded by emptiness, therefore we're pervaded by the Dharmakaya. Not one moment of movement in consciousness, and not one atom is not pervaded by emptiness. In short, the Dharmakaya. So that is our reality. Our ultimate reality is the Buddha nature. Secondly, so the second reasoning, so to speak, Contra says, there is no differentiation in the thusness of Buddhas, oneself, and all sentient beings. Thusness means tatata in Sanskrit, or devjini, the as-it-isness. There is no differentiation in the thusness of Buddhas, the thusness of oneself, and the thusness of all sentient beings, whether they are good, bad, great, small, and superior, or inferior. So it's like, we think right now, Buddhas are one type of entity, we're another type of entity. Between us people, there's different types of entities. There's good people, bad people, high people, low people, etc., etc. But the actual reality of all beings, even the actual reality of Buddhas over there, so to speak, and sentient beings over here, is one reality. There cannot be two realities. The ultimate reality is only one. It pervades all beings. So although I look different and temporarily function differently from a Buddha, my reality is Buddha. And the same for all sentient beings. No matter what our temporary manifestation is, our temporary activity, our temporary status, we're all pervaded by the one reality of thusness, of as-it-isness. So that is the second, because there cannot be differentiations in ultimate reality. You can't have one bit of ultimate reality over here which has one characteristic, and one bit of ultimate reality over here which has another characteristic. Because if it has different characteristics, it's not ultimate, it's not final. So that's it. No matter how astonishing it is, my reality and the reality of the Buddhas is actually one reality, the devjini, the as-it-isness, the tatata, the thusness of all phenomena, of all beings. So this is the second proof, so to speak, of Buddha nature. He continues, the ability of thusness to produce the Buddha qualities has existed since beginningless time. So because I'm pervaded by that, then it's always been my reality. I've always had the potential to become Buddha and therefore manifest the Buddha qualities, the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, the 18 special phenomena, or put it another way, the qualities of compassion, wisdom and power. They've always existed in me and all other beings since beginningless time, because thusness is my ultimate reality, just as much as it's the ultimate reality of Buddhas. So what Buddhas have done, I can do. Because I'm, so to speak, very much so to speak, made of the same stuff. I mean, Tajin is not a stuff, but you see the point. And then thirdly, Control Odotai says, the attainment of the true nature, the naturally abiding lineage or element, exists in all living beings. So this is the third point, that all of us belong to the lineage of the Buddhas. No matter that right now, or family of the Buddhas, Sanskrit word is kula, the Tibetan word is rik, means something like clan or lineage or family. We all belong to that. And therefore we all have naturally the potential for manifesting Buddhahood. And we always have, precisely because our nature is the Dharmakaya. We are pervaded by thusness. So therefore, thirdly, we all have the potential, like a person born in a royal family will grow up to be the monarch. We belong to that family. In this case, we belong to the Buddha lineage. Even though right now, we could say that due to karma, we fall into the 5 different families of the temporarily cut off ones, those alienated from our Buddha nature, the dubious, the uncertain ones, those who are not yet made a connection with the Dharma, the Shravakas, those who make a connection with the Dharma, but only to that of the disciples or Shravakas, those who make a connection with the Dharma and become Pracheka Buddhas, solitary realizers, Hinayanas again, or those who have the Mahayana lineage, that is, those who when they encounter the Dharma turn naturally to the Mahayana practice. The fullest expression. All these are expressions of the Buddha nature being present in us. Even those who have no feeling for it still are pervaded by it, as in the cut-off family. Those who are Mahayanist, as soon as they hear the teachings, will joyfully enter the Mahayana. But all 5 are, as it were, responses to the Buddha nature existing within. So all of us belong to the Buddha family. We have the naturally abiding lineage, so to speak. Like naturally abiding lineage, like whether or not you know you're a prince, you might even look like a frog. But actually, your naturally abiding lineage is that you're royal. You are a potential monarch. So it's the same with us, frogs and other type of sentient beings. Even lay roast beef. That's a little joke for the French and English. Both the frogs and the roast beef both belong to the Buddha lineage. So the attainment of Buddha nature, the attainment of the true nature, the possibility of realizing the true nature exists in all sentient beings. Therefore, Controller Thaye says, therefore all sentient beings possess the Buddha nature. In order to take this to heart, he says, recite, so is again a kind of encapsulated version of this introduction in the form of a slogan. The Buddhakaya is, it's a quote from the Lama, of course. The Buddhakaya is pervasive. Buddhakaya here is a synonym for Dhammakaya, so everything is pervaded by the Dhammakaya because everything is pervaded by emptiness. The Tathata, the thusness, is indivisible. There can't be gradations in ultimate reality, whether you temporarily appear like a Buddha or sentient being. And all beings possess the lineage, the natural inclination to Buddhahood exists in all beings. Thus, through these three reasonings, they always have the Buddha nature. So that is the verse at the end as a slogan. In this way, Controller Thaye says, there exists, so these 3 points can be summarized again this way, the Dhammakaya of the purities. So as when we're talking about the first reasoning, we're emphasizing the absolute purity that pervades all being, which is known as the Dhammakaya. Because Dhammakaya is what the Buddha nature manifests as when it's free from the being surrounded by the conditioned phenomena, the incidental impurities. So that's like stressing Buddha nature like nakedly. You're all pervaded by the Dhammakaya. The second point, the second reasoning, so-called, he says is the thusness of impurities and purities, meaning that what we're stressing with the second argument is focusing on the fact that temporarily they appear to be impurities, sentient beings like ourselves, covered by delusion, and purities, Buddhas, but they're one and the same reality. They're both pervaded by the same reality. So that's the thusness of impurities and purities. They seem to be two existent categories, separate categories, the impure here, pure there, but their thusness is one and the same. And thirdly, the lineage of impurities and purities, meaning although sentient beings temporarily seem to fall into 5 families in relation to the Buddha nature, so we can call those the impurities, they all have the natural purity within them, so they can all become Buddhas. So this is the third introduction then, through the 3 reasonings taught in the Lama, through which we can have confidence that we're pervaded by the Buddha nature. So actually, it's already getting on, and I don't want you to suffer from starvation before His Holiness bestows upon us the initiation this afternoon. So I'll pause here, and if there are any questions, you could offer them, and I could attempt to answer them.
Lama, what is the distinction between Dhammata and Dhammakaya?
Between what? Dhammata. Dhammata, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, of course, they're close, they're related. You could even say it like that, like this. If you perceive the Dhammata, meaning the true nature of reality, the true nature of all phenomena, you come to possess the Dhammakaya. You're a Buddha, and your nature as a Buddha is known as the Dhammakaya, the one who has recognized the Dhammata, the true nature of reality. So one might say, although it's a bit dualistic, Dhammata is what you recognize the nature of. Dhammakaya is what you are through seeing the Dhammata. That would be a very simplified definition. Almost like Dhammakaya is emphasizing the wisdom that you now have, the transcendental wisdom, which is precisely that you know what the nature of the Dhammatā is. So we say, a Buddha possesses the Dhammakaya. A Buddha is endowed with the Dhammakaya. It's what they ultimately are. And they are that because they've recognized finally the true nature of reality, the Dhammatā.
Dear Lama, I have another question concerning Big Why. I know that thanks to Buddha nature, everything is manifested, but why there is Buddha nature? If there is some source or some reason why there is this Buddha nature, thanks to it, everything manifests.
No. The Buddha nature doesn't have any reason, because if it had a reason, it would have had a creation. It would have been, is it loud enough? It would have at one time not existed, and then it was thought necessary to create it. Really, from the Shentong point of view, always without beginning, there's just the Buddha nature. The more, in a way, the funnier question is like, why is there delusion? But of course, the answer to that is, what delusion? There isn't even any delusion either. There just seems to be. And the delusion of this moment comes out of the basis of the delusion of the previous moment, which also didn't ultimately exist. But all that exists and all that ever has existed is none other than the Buddha nature, according to this teaching. So it doesn't have any reason, no causes. I mean, one might say the reason for teaching the Buddha nature, in the Jude Lama it explains the reason for teaching the Buddha nature, and so for instance, that we'll have the confidence that Buddhahood can be attained. The Buddha nature itself, no, it has no cause.
Dear Lama, I also have a question concerning the Buddha nature. So we are perceiving through the 5 skandhas, we have this illusion of a body, this illusion of an eye.
Yes.
So how does this go together if there's the possibility of fainting or falling asleep and this stream of consciousness is broken? Like there are moments of no awareness. How does it go together with this impermanent awareness?
Well, first of all, when you fall asleep, the stream of consciousness is not broken, because the kunji namshe, the base consciousness, continues to rise from moment to moment. It is not the 6 sense consciousnesses are not operating. So that's a clear distinction between what ceases when you faint and what doesn't cease. The kunji namshe does not cease at that time. As in, for instance, sometimes in the night, there's periods of sleep without dream. Even the imprints are not stirring up appearances from the base consciousness, but the base consciousness is continuing nevertheless. So then, that was the first point. So secondly, I've already forgotten what
that was pretty much it. Thank
that
you.
was
Yeah.
okay.
I only have a problem because there are those moments where I seemingly don't experience and I don't get this together with this.
Well, you see, also, the thing is at the time of death also that is possible, that when the sense consciousnesses sink and the movement of the disturbing emotions sink into the kunji namshe, at that time we have the possibility, the clear light, the luminosity, which we call the mother luminosity, will shine in our mind. But if we've not prepared for that through practice, we will faint at that time also. And so it's like the mind is not ceased, of course, but it's just immobile. Nothing is manifesting. But it will soon enough with the Bardo visions. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Dear Lama,
Yeah.
to your right, I think. Yes,
Okay.
here. Hi.
Okay.
yesterday you mentioned something about the possibility of becoming attached to the science of meditation.
Yeah,
Vipassana.
Gesel Metokpa, yeah.
Yes. And there I was just wondering if the literature or you have any tips. I would guess. I think it's very difficult to proceed or like maintain aspiration without certain science, and at the same time there is the danger of getting attached to it.
Yeah. Have you received the teaching from a Lama? Have you received the teachings of the ninth Karmapa, Wanchuk Doji, or Mahamudra?
No.
Try to receive that, but because you're Mahamudra practitioner, I guess you're aspiring to be, or you are.
I guess.
Yeah. Well, try to receive some detailed teaching on this from a Lama. It would be very helpful. But you're right, in a way they are very inspiring. And treated properly, with the proper perspective, they will, yes, push one forward, and that's very good. But the danger is one can grasp onto them and make them more than they are. Think, oh, I've really achieved this, or this is the nature of enlightenment. And then your meditation is blocked, because every time you meditate from then on, you'll be looking to repeat that experience, thinking to yourself, how did I get into that state of bliss? How did I get into that state of clarity? Or how did I get into that state of non-thought? So you will not be meditating freshly. You'll be the way, there'll be a skin over your meditation through which you cannot penetrate. Of course, if you become very fixated on it, then it's said you will even be reborn in particular realms, but not advance on the path through this. So, anyway, as I said, try to receive more detailed teachings. But the great Master Pacharampa says about these experiences, when they arise, he says, smash them. Again and again, smash such experiences, meaning smash your clinging to them. Try to cut through them as they arise and return the mind just to like freshness, almost like natural astonishment without anything in mind. So so one shouldn't be frightened of them, however, because otherwise that will make one's mind very fearful and tight in meditation. So I don't want anybody to go away now worrying, oh my God, am I going to have an experience of bliss today? I must stop it. Have one, it's okay. Just don't cling to it. So for those who are having them and attempted to cling, then Pacha Rinpoche's advice to cut through it, to smash it, that is really good. Yeah, yeah.
And just a follow-up question.
Yes.
The other possibility also exists that you don't have these signs for a
yes.
long period of time.
Well, make more merit, do more practice, but also don't worry, because in a way that is almost like overrating them. If you see, you've got to meditate without hope and fear. Hope meaning hope for results, and fear meaning fear, oh, I'm not getting anywhere. You've just got to meditate like as a simple guy, really. Just, I do my prayers, I rely on the blessings of the 3 jewels, I generate bodhicitta, rely on the blessings of the Lama, I sit. Meditation will find me. That's what one should think. It will find me. I don't need to go and find it. It will find me if I'm just simple and easygoing enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Want to? Thank you for your teachings. My question is, would it be correct to say like that an individual stream of consciousness, which is currently not enlightened, right? So when this stream gets enlightened, could we call it an enlightened stream, individual enlightened stream of consciousness? Is it correct to say like that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I better go over here first, I think. Oh, no, I don't know where. Where am I going to next? Over here, okay.
Thank you, Lama.
I'm neglecting the left wingers over here.
I thought this might be a quick question since you mentioned Dharmakaya and Nirmanakaya.
Dhammakaya,
And the Nirmanakaya.
yes,
And we have a Sambhogakaya
yes,
in relation to Buddha nature.
yes.
I would like to understand, maybe all of us. And even the essence, maybe the fourth kaya.
Yes, I could take a couple of years explain this. You could come to some teachings on the Namshi Yeshi, discriminating consciousness and primordial wisdom. You could come to those and such things. But really, from the Shentong point of view, the three kayas, all three kayas are in a way present in the Buddha nature, even now. So when we've removed the veils, the covering from the Buddha nature, they all naturally manifest. The Dhammakaya does not need any conditions to manifest. It's because it's the clarified mind stream itself, the Buddha nature mind free of all the veils. But if there are sentient beings to be trained, then the Dhammakaya will radiate the two form kayas, the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya, to those beings. Why will it do that? Because when you're an ordinary sentient being and made the Bodhisattva vow at the beginning of the path, you vowed that when you achieve Buddhahood, when you realize the Dhammakaya mind, nature of mind, you would benefit sentient beings endlessly. So the fulfillment of your vow comes about when you freed the Buddha nature from the impurities. Your mind is then none other than the Dhammakaya, and it radiates the two form kayas. Rather like this, if there's a moon in the sky and there's pools of water on the earth, without even needing to think about it, the moon's reflection, without the moon needing to think about it, the moon's reflection appears in those pools of water. Some pools are big, like oceans. The moon's reflection appears in the ocean. Some pools are very tiny. The moon's reflection appears in them. So for bodhisattvas on the 10th noble level, the Dhammakaya Buddha emanates in the form of the Sambhogakayas, the bodies of radiant glory, such as Vairocana, Amitabha, and so on. For us ordinary sentient beings who have not reached the noble levels, the Buddha emanates from the Dhammakaya in the form of the Nirmanakayas, the transformation bodies, because they, so to speak, can be perceived by people like us who still have many, many obscurations, whereas the 10th level bodhisattvas, they have very few obscurations. So they can relate much more easily with the Buddha's reality. But they still cannot recognize the Dhammakaya until they recognize their own Dhammakaya mind. They've realized the Buddha nature entirely. So from the Shentong point of view, the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya are just the simple, natural manifestations of the Dhammakaya. And so, like I say, they already exist, even within us now, as the potential of our Buddha nature. But then, as I say, there's many more teachings about this in the commentary on the Jude Lama and in the third Karmapa's works. Okay?
Dear Lama, I have a question. According to Sagyal Rinpoche and his Tibetan teaching about living and dying, he explains this Buddha nature like some luminosity of mind and very subtle mind, which left.
So I can't. The hearing is so bad up here, and what you're saying is important. So I can't really hear it properly.
Now, do you hear?
Sorry?
No?
Sogyal Rinpoche, yes, I knew him. Yes,
Okay.
we went to restaurants together. But nothing happened.
Okay, I will repeat. Um, according to teaching of Sogyal Rinpoche of Tibetan teaching of living and dying,
Yeah.
he explains that there is some luminosity of mind or very subtle mind which left the body when all 5 aggregates will like destroyed and these elements of body will destroyed. So this very subtle mind will leave the body and it acting in next life, in rebirth.
This is what we call the Kunji Namshi, the base consciousness, the 8th of the 8 samsaric consciousnesses.
And I wanted to ask, according to Shentong view, this is Buddha nature or I'm...
It will be Buddha nature if it is clarified, if one understands that the Namshi Yeshi itself has no intrinsic nature, then that is the Buddha, that is when we realize the Buddha nature at that point. But right now, it's like there's still a skin, an impurity on the Buddha nature, and so therefore we take the Buddha nature as my mind. And when we think from the perspective of my mind, that we call the Kunji Namshi, the 8th samsaric consciousness. That carries the imprints of our karma from day to day, from life to life. So if one were able to look right into that mind at the time of death, one would recognize it is the clear light, the luminosity, the Buddha nature. But right now, it is, Kunji Namshi is still like a samsaric phenomenon covering it over. So in this teaching, and in Dzogchen too actually, there's a very major distinction between the Kunji Namshi and the real basis, which is the Buddha nature.
And second question, so you explained this Shentong view, and I wanted to ask about Ranton view, common Madhyamaka, what part of mind is acting in this rebirth?
Sorry, again, I didn't understand.
So if in the common Madhyamaka there is no non-permanent Buddha nature,
Yes.
what part of mind or what part of ourself is acting in rebirth?
Active in?
What is going from life to life?
Oh yeah, that's a very good question. Different Madhyamaka teachers have different opinions about that. So, for instance, Geluk Madhyamaka teachers seem to say that there is something, it's a samsaric phenomenon which they call the mere I, the mere thought of I. And they say that is what transmits from life to life until enlightenment. But in Sakya, we say, actually, the Kunji Namshi, the base consciousness, is that which goes from life to life, but it doesn't have any intrinsic nature. And at that point, when we realize that, then we're liberated completely from samsara. So in other words, Sakya, we like the Chittamatra teachings to explain conventional truth, including how rebirth actually occurs. But we say that base consciousness actually doesn't have any intrinsic nature.
You explain the relationship between Dharmakaya and Dharmata, but can you please add to this game also Dharmadhatu? What what is the role of Dharma Dhatu between them? And if it's possible, also can you explain also Dharma Dhatu wisdom? What does it mean by that? Like one of the 5 wisdom, if it's possible in terms of time.
Well, no, it isn't. But Dhamma Dhatu means, can be explained in different ways, actually. In one way, Dhamma Dhatu just means the realm of phenomena. It's like a way of referring to the totality of everything that is, because Dhatu means elements. So if you listed all the elements, the conditioned phenomena that make up the world, you would say that's the Dhamma Dhatu. But from the Shentong point of view, this can also, Dhamma Dhatu can mean like the real element, the real Dhatu, which is none other than the Buddha nature. Anyway, to go to your the other point, the Dhamma Dhatu wisdom. The Dhamma Dhatu wisdom is the wisdom of Vairocana, actually, as explained in the Anuttara Tantra system. So it's the wisdom that sees the nature of all phenomena altogether. So it's like the wisdom of space, one might say. It embraces all things, whereas the discriminating wisdom of Amitabha recognizes the individual details of phenomena. The Dhammadhatu wisdom is that which sees all phenomena all at once, as pervaded by ultimate reality. So it depends upon the context in which the term is used, one might say. Also in the Namshi Eshi, the text by the third Karmapa Ranjan Dorji, there's more explanations there. The Dhammadhatu wisdom is said to be the wisdom corresponding to when you realize all 3 kayas of the Buddha are actually pervaded by one identity. That is said to be the Dhammadhatu wisdom.
Thank you for taking the time. I'm curious about how the meditation could go on from what you said yesterday, this non-meditation state, which seemed to be more an experience of space and emptiness, this experience of space and emptiness in this non-meditation you've been talking yesterday about, where you don't distinguish so much if there's a thought or not a thought. And if you go from there, what would be the introduction of luminosity or Buddha nature as a practice or as an experience?
Well, now today we're dealing with we started to go through the introduction. So it's really like if you gain some confidence in that meditation, which we talked about yesterday, then from that, when you have that confidence, then you turn to this teaching on Buddha nature. And in a way, there's no further meditation instructions, one might say. It's just now to bring this teaching that you hear to look into your meditation and realize, and this emptiness that has opened up, actually its real nature is just the Buddha nature. That's what it is. And the emptiness is just the emptiness of everything else apart from the Buddha nature. So that's it, really.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lama, for your teaching. Is there a difference between the emptiness Hinayana practitioner experiences, like just empty, and the one a Shentong practitioner experience, like emptiness with qualities? And how does that go along with the fact that there is one reality?
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, for instance, the Shravakas, the Hinayanas, they do realize emptiness, actually, but they just don't realize how it pervades everything. It's like, if you took the analogy of a drop of water, it's water, but if you look around, you'll see the whole ocean is water. So the Shravakas understand emptiness when they look at themselves as individuals. They see, actually, there's no true self here. There's no solidity to this. It is just empty. But what they don't do is then realize, and that applies to everything, all phenomena, big and small, inner and outer, subtle and gross, me and you, right down to atoms, right down to everything. Everything also is empty, just as my individual self is. Rather like the person who, having seen the nature of a drop of water, realizes the whole ocean is just this too. So you can't say the Shravakas don't understand emptiness. They just don't realize how it pervades everything. The common Madhyamikas, they also understand emptiness, but they don't realize that in a way emptiness only refers to conditioned phenomena. What is left untouched by emptiness is the Buddha nature itself. So we call the Buddha nature teaching an mayingak in Tibetan, which is an affirming negation, meaning a negation that leaves Buddha nature affirmed. It negates all other phenomena. It says all conditioned phenomena are empty, but there is the Buddha nature. Because if there wasn't the Buddha nature, if everything, including the Buddha nature, was empty, Buddhahood would be impossible.
Yesterday you said that what obtains enlightenment is the mind streams.
Yeah.
But I find that sort of hard to understand, because if everything is empty,
Yes.
then it seems like it would also have to be ultimately empty of mind streams.
No, that is what I...
Okay.
They think the non-affirming negation teaching would lead you to think that. But that which has never been created or produced is not negated by emptiness. Yes, our mind, from a Shentong point of view, is empty, but empty of anything except its own nature, which is luminosity and emptiness fused together, inseparable. So that is what achieves enlightenment.
Right.
Some Rangtongpa thinkers say that their teaching of emptiness simply means the mind can change from one thing to another because it has no fixed nature. So you can go from unenlightenment to enlightenment. That is the way some Rangtongpa thinkers explain this. But from the Shentong point of view, even this would be a conditioned enlightenment, one that has to be produced and therefore will come to an end. So the Shentong teaching is that no, enlightenment is naturally present from the beginning. And that's why once achieved, it is irreversible.
Okay, so if I could ask a follow-up then. So I understand that and I agree with that. But what I'm wondering then is just for my own, like linguistically, the concept of mind stream or whatever that is, it seems sort of difficult for me personally, whatever, to understand what a mind stream might be. So would it be like a fair
well, you're experiencing it right now.
Right. So
you are the mind stream.
Okay, thank you. So then would it be fair to say, like, would it be a similarly accurate explanation to say, using the analogy of like a dream, that whatever it is that's dreaming you right now is what ultimately wakes up and then realizes the Buddha nature? You could
say that. That would be, again, all analogies are using relative truth and therefore are slippery and tricky and deceptive. But it would be a useful analogy, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
could you please mention just a few key points on the subsequent stage, just to give us like a round off kind of the sutra section?
Yeah, make merit. Do
What?
a lot of make merit, do prostrations, circumambulations, build stupas, do your prayers, recite the Zangchu Manlam, etc. When the great Dolpo Pasha Jason, he said that he only finally realized the view, the proper view, when he constructed a stupa. At that time, it said, the ocean of the view burst forth in his mind, which is why he called his famous text, the ocean of certainty, Richo Nedan Jamso. So, if you have the opportunity, build stupas. But also do your prayers, do all the normal Mahayana practice. This will support the practice. That is what Control Thai will teach for the subsequent stage. So now we've reached nearly, well, more or less halfway through the teachings. So there's many more explanations of the Buddha nature to be given, about 5 important ones. And this is just, of course, in the sutra teaching. And then we've got to do the subsequent stage. And, of course, after that, there's the explanation from the point of view of the Vajrayana, or the Tantras. But at least we've done half, so I'm very happy about that. And as regards the lung, no, I've not given the lung, the reading transmission just yet, because I'd rather give it when all teaching is completed. And also, my spiritual power doesn't extend to any lungs or initiations being valid over the internet. I'm not such a master. I have confidence in that. But I can give it in the future, of course. So I'm very happy to complete the half of the teachings for now. I feel it's very safe because of His Holiness's presence, because he makes up for any gaps in our understanding and efforts by his extraordinary blessings. But happy to share something of this teaching. I first received some teachings on Shentong, not from my main lamas, but from Khenpo Sotim Jamso Rinpoche. Khenpo Sotim Jamso Rinpoche was, well, he's still alive actually, though not so well. He was appointed Khenpo Rumtek by 16th Karmapa, Ranja Rigpa. So when 16th Karmapa came for the second time to Europe, so that was he came first in 74. When he came in 77, he came with Khenpo Sotim. So Khenpo Sotim was a friend of my Lama Kamatina Rinpoche. They knew each other earlier. So Rinpoche said, "Oh, he's very learned," so he tried to take some teachings. So Khenpo Sotim also gave me the transmission and some teachings for the Jude Lama, Dutra Tantra Shastra, in private actually. And then later, in Canada, Rinpoche himself, Kamatina Rinpoche himself, gave me the detailed commentary on Jude Lama from Jamgon Control, and the works of the 3rd Karmapa, and the 8th Karmapa also wrote a text on Shentong. All those I received from Rinpoche, and then also this one of Controls. I think that was in 1986 that I received that from Rinpoche. So in this way, I received quite a bit of Shentong teachings. So then I'm happy to share it, and especially Shamla Rinpoche, shortly before he passed away, Shamla Rinpoche asked me to go to America and teach it in Bodhipath. Anyway, I have tried. But I'm also very happy to share a little bit about it here in Kibi. But it's just scraping the surface, I must say. But I'm happy that we shared it together. So let's finish now, at least our part in this week, by dedicating the merit. Sunnam di tamshi zikpa ne tobe ne pe dranam pamchin Chiga nachi bala drupai sepe sole roa sho. Okay, so have a nice lunch and see you later, alligator.